Big 30 Pooh Shiesty. Why they call y'all this?
Shit.
Good as mine. Good.
Memphis has always had a solid music scene, but in recent years, it's been on fire. New stars have been popping up one after another, and the whole industry has been in a race to sign as many new Memphis artists as possible, knowing a handful will blow and become mainstream stars. It's arguably the hottest city in the rap game, possibly even surpassing Atlanta in terms of the amount of new talent it's producing on a consistent basis. Unfortunately, despite all of this shine that the city has been getting, there's also been a lot of negativity. Memphis is one of the most dangerous and violent cities in America. Their music scene reflects this, with rappers on both ends, some catching cases and others losing their lives. The past 5 years have been a roller coaster for the city, so in this video, we'll take a look at how Memphis took over the industry. This is part 2, so if you haven't seen part 1, go check it out. The link will be in the description. Part 1 stopped in 2017 with the peak of the paper route, CMG beef, and the explosion of Black Youngsta and Moneybagg Yo's careers. And towards the end of this year, another Memphis rapper popped out with a big song. Blockboy JB dropped the song Shoot in July, and towards late 2017, it started blowing up. He brought a lot of energy and had fun with his music, and was dancing in the video, which was reminiscent of the early Memphis days and the era of gangsta walking and getting bucked. Then, in January, he dropped another big song called Rover. He was starting to buzz and even attracted the attention of Drake. Drake's father is from Memphis, and he's always shown the city love. He ended up hearing Blockboy JB's song, liking it, and reaching out to work. And in February, they dropped a song called Look Alive, which went crazy and was one of the biggest hits of the year. The producer for Shoot, Rover, and Look Alive was a college student at Middle Tennessee State named Tay Keith. Tay Keith had been making beats for a while and had already produced big songs for Yo Gotti, Moneybagg Yo, and Black Youngsta like Gang Gang and Birthday. But when Blockboy JB blew, he really got the recognition he deserved. And on top of this, by the time he made Shoot, he had a new iconic tag that made his beats instantly recognizable. Through the early and mid-10s, most Memphis rappers had gravitated towards the Atlanta sound, but around 2016, Memphis producers had begun to distinguish themselves again, using a slower sound with simple dark piano melodies and basic but hard-hitting drums, reminiscent of the old Memphis sound. Tay Keith would be a big part of popularizing this more modern version of the Memphis sound and established himself beyond the city as one of the biggest producers of the new generation, going on to work frequently with the biggest rappers in the game, and even producing a hit record for Beyonce. But 2018 was the year he really got his name. 2018 was also the year Key Glock started to establish himself. Key Glock had begun to take off in late 2017 with the song On My Soul, and he continued going up through 2018. Key was Dolph's cousin and signed to his label Paper Route Empire from the beginning, and they would collaborate frequently in the future. Around the same time period, Block and Key were blowing up. A female Memphis artist called Juicy Fruit was taking off on a smaller level with songs like Fed Up and Devil Want My Soul. In 2019, the city got a huge boost of energy when a 16-year-old kid blew up onto the scene.
I am a menace. Keep me a ratchet like tennis.
NLE Choppa was a sophomore in high school who had recently started rapping and only had a few songs. But in January of 2019, he dropped the song titled Shotter Flow. The song went mega viral on YouTube, and in less than 2 months, NLE Choppa went from unknown to the hottest artist in Memphis without the push of any label backing him. Choppa continued dropping songs through the rest of the year, releasing songs like Camelot and Shotter Flow 2, and by the end of 2019, he was the hottest artist in the city and the top artist in mainstream rap, period. Other new Memphis artists taking off in 2019 included people like Kevo Money, Action Pack AP, and Duke Deuce. Kevo and AP had a huge record together called Don't Know Me that was blowing up in the city. And AP also had a record with NLE Choppa called Choppas on Choppas that ended up racking up millions of views. Duke Deuce blew up later in the year when he decided to pay homage to the OG Memphis sound and remix Project Pat's If You Ain't From My Hood for a record called Crunk Ain't Dead. The record went crazy, getting nationwide attention, eventually leading to Offset signing Duke and him joining QC. Over at Paper Route, Dolph and Key teamed up to drop a collab mixtape called Dumb and Dumber, which did well, and throughout the rest of the year, they both saw their numbers going up. The rivals at CMG were seeing mixed results. Black Youngsta had peaked in 2017 and was fading in relevance, but Moneybagg Yo had been growing consistently and dropping big songs of his own, as well as collaborations with some of the hottest artists out, like Lil Baby, Gunna, and Meg Thee Stallion. In 2020, he hit another level when songs like Said Some and Me vs. Me took off. By this point, he was one of the hottest artists in the entire game. NLE Choppa was at a similar level. He had cooled off slightly from 2019, but was still a big artist. He dropped his Top Shotta album in August, which contained the hit single Walk 'Em Down that went crazy and became his most streamed song to date. 2020 was also the year he started his spiritual journey and began speaking on things like the importance of meditation, eating healthy, and sobriety, and his album From Dark to Light reflected this shift. Between Choppa, Bag, Dolph, and Glock, Memphis was arguably the most mainstream it had ever been. But down in the streets of South Memphis, more stars were just getting started.
Boogie for your llama, yeah. Choppa hit it hard on her beat, ain't no more drama, yeah.
Pooh Shiesty had started rapping in late 2018, but he started taking it seriously in 2019, dropping songs like Shiesty Summer and Choppa Talk 2. Alongside him, his homie Big 30 was taking off as well with songs like No Vouch and Brrr. And together, they were putting on for their group, which was called Choppa Gang. They were making some noise in the city, and in September, Big 30 signed to Moneybagg Yo's label, Bread Gang Entertainment. In December, Pooh Shiesty's cousin, Big Scarr, began rapping as well, also quickly taking off, repping his group, Double R. Separate from Choppa Gang, Double R, and everything they had going on, another Memphis artist called Big Boogie was building the buzz of his own with songs like Truth Be Told and Mental Healing. In 2020, Mental Healing really took off, blowing Boogie up. The song was a heartfelt, soulful record, and this same year, Kevo Money also had a very successful soulful record of his own called Leave Someday. He was already hot in the city from his 2018 run, but this became his new biggest song, racking up millions of views. So in 2020, there was a new crop of talent in the city, and around this time, Gucci Mane was trying to build up his new 1017 roster, and so far he had one rapper from Georgia called Fujiano, but he had his ear to the streets, and in early 2020, he heard one of Pooh Shiesty's songs and heard the potential. He reached out and ended up signing Pooh. Then in July, he dropped a project called So Icy Summer, introducing his new artist to his fan base, and the tape was successful, containing several big records and putting a spotlight on the new talent at 1017. Following this album, Gucci signed Big Scarr to 1017 as one of the final members of the 2020 class of this new 1017 roster. Out of all the new artists, Pooh was taking off the fastest with songs from So Icy Summer like Monday to Sunday and 762 God, each passing 10 million views. Despite all these views and the new money he was seeing, he was taking risks like he still had nothing to lose, and in October, him and his crew attempted to rob some dudes for weed and shoes in broad day, pulling up in a bright green McLaren, and this situation ended up in shots being fired and Pooh speeding off. He would dodge jail time for the moment, but the situation would end up following him.
Bitch, I got my own fight, don't need security in the club. All they wolfing on the neck, nigga, I thought you was a thug.
A month after this incident, he teamed up with Dirk to drop a song called Back in Blood. And a month later, it started going viral. The song went everywhere, got tens of millions of views on YouTube, and made Pooh Shiesty the hottest new artist going into 2021. He capitalized on the new attention, dropping his debut mixtape Shiesty Season in February of 2021. The rise of Pooh Shiesty put a spotlight on Big 30 and Big Scarr, and they both saw their numbers going up as well. 30's song Allegations from 2020 began going crazy, and other songs like Neighborhood Heroes and Shots Out the Vet were racking up millions as well. Going into the year, Scarr was barely a year into rap, and in April, he dropped his first ever project, Big Grim Reaper, which gained him a lot of attention, with many believing that he had the possibility of blowing up the way Pooh had. Alongside Scarr, other rappers in his camp like Quez Ruthless and Big Unk were making names for themselves as well, and Big Moochie Grape was also a part of their Double R clique, but he had already established himself in 2020, dropping a hit called and signing the paper route. Outside of Pooh, 30, Scarr, and the artists around them, plenty of other artists in the city were starting to see more attention because of the movement taking off. One of these artists was Lil Double. He had begun his career in late 2020, and early on, he had a song called 007 take off, helping him build his buzz. Then he ended up meeting Future and eventually signing to him. In 2021, he continued to gain popularity and dropped 2 projects called Slimin' 4K Beats and Walkdown Gang, with big songs like Been Solid, G6, and Area 51. Then he got a huge look when he was featured on Young Thug's Punk album on a song called Scoliosis. By 2021, Moneybagg Yo was 7 years into his career and still at the top of the game, and him, Choppa, and Pooh were the faces of Memphis. But in July, Pooh ended up getting into more trouble. And back in Blood, he said he had his own fire and didn't need security in the club, and this was not rap cap, because in June, he was arrested for popping a security guard in his ankle in the club. After being arrested, the bond for his other pending case about the robbery in Miami was revoked, and he would have to sit in jail until his trial. This was a blow to the city, but in November, Memphis experienced a tragedy when Dolph was targeted in a hit and ended up losing his life. From 2008, he had grinded non-stop, invested in his career, and independently turned himself into one of the biggest artists in Memphis, and also gave out opportunities to countless artists through his paper route empire, and just like that, he was gone. Going into 2022, the city got more bad news. In April, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 63 months, meaning he wouldn't come home until 2027. This same month, an unknown female artist from Memphis called Glorilla dropped a song called F.N.F, and the song ended up blowing up out of nowhere. In July, she signed to CMG and got to work dropping tracks like Tomorrow and Blessed that went on to rack up tens of millions of views and established her as the new hottest rapper in Memphis. All of the new rappers who were hot from the previous year continued to do their thing, and in July, an older Memphis rapper came home. F.N.F 2 times had been rapping since 2016, and early on in his career, he had shown potential, quickly making a name for himself around the city. During this time, he had become associated with Moneybagg Yo's group, Bread Gang Entertainment, and was in position to take off the way Bag and Youngster did, but things had went left. F.N.F had fell out with Bag. Then, in 2017, he found himself involved in 2 shootings outside the clubs he was performing at. F.N.F was a convicted felon, and these events led authorities to book him, and eventually he was sentenced for being a felon in possession of a firearm and had to serve 5 years. But the whole time he was locked up, his career was progressing. He had some unreleased music he was dropping, and more people were catching on. Fast forward to July of 2022, and F.N.F was finally released and immediately got to work recording and dropping a music video for a song called Get Even. All the momentum his music had when he was in prison led to people already being tuned in, and the song quickly took off. He followed this up with another big song called Back In, which also went on to rack up millions of views. He continued putting out music, and by December of 2022, when he dropped his album 90 Days Later, he was one of the hottest artists in the city, looking like the newest star out of Memphis. Unfortunately, this same month, Memphis also lost a potential star when Big Scarr OD'd and passed away at the young age of 22. This brings us to the present day. Pooh Shiesty still has another 4 years in the pen, but Moneybagg Yo and NLE Choppa have remained consistent, and in addition to them, there is a whole scene of new rappers carrying the torch in the city. The city is on top of rap, and throughout the next couple of years, we'll most likely see even more artists blow. Memphis has been consistent for decades, and after years of being overlooked and excluded in the mainstream, things have finally turned around, and the city as a whole is finally starting to get the recognition it's deserved for years.